All right, guys, thanks for listening and tuning in. Today, I'm going to briefly present on Linnea Passaler's book, Heal Your Nervous System. I am passionate about this content and nervous system regulation because it truly is the foundation for better health. All right, so let's get into it. If you are tired all the time, can't seem to lose weight, or may even be gaining weight, I'm going to explain why the nervous system, your nervous system, may be the reason. Now, in an oversimplified explanation, the nervous system consists of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord and all of its networks. And part of this is a sympathetic nervous system, which is known as your fight or flight. And then your parasympathetic nervous system, which oversimplified is the rest, digest, repair, and rebuild. All right, so now we're going to get into the book. So our nervous system has a direct effect on things like blood sugar, blood pressure, hormones, emotional response. And so when we get dysregulated, we can experience the host of emotional and physical symptoms from anxiety, depression, rash, irritable bowel, chronic pain, etc. I'm going to tell you a quick story. So growing up and even into adulthood, I was always told you're being too sensitive. Anytime I got hurt or upset, whether it was over an argument with a friend, a breakup, or even a disgruntled patient at the pharmacy telling me off, I could rarely shake it off. I would ruminate for hours, replaying every little thing I said or did, thinking I should have said this instead of that, or I should have reacted in a different way. I'd overanalyze and end up making myself feel worse. So as I entered my 20s, I would turn to things like alcohol or emotional eating, thinking it would make me feel better. But of course, those things only made me feel worse. At times, I would be stuck in a harmful cycle of coping and then regretting. Fast forward to this year, I stumbled upon the book Heal Your Nervous System by Linnea Passaler at the library. This book discusses how crucial flexibility is in managing our emotions and stress. It's not about quick fix symptomatic healing, which we tend to focus on in our culture. It's more about being able to flex under pressure without breaking and then eventually be able to return back to baseline. So this was a crucial shift for me. Instead of being stuck in a constant loop of overreacting and self-criticism, I now have a new tool that I rely on. It's a concept known as the gap, the space between feeling discomfort in my emotions, in my skin, in my body. So the space between that and choosing a response. This concept of the gap is a crucial step many of us inadvertently skip before we'd want to address this before we dive into practices like yoga, meditation, spa days for healing. So the initial steps also include recognizing where we fall on something known as the sensitivity spectrum. It includes respecting the gap, which I'm going to get into in a bit, as an intentional space between the stressor we are experiencing and our response. Another overlooked step is acknowledging that our nervous system moves up and down what is known as the alertness elevator, a system present in all humans that reflects different levels of physical, emotional, and biological responses. We need to be able to identify where we are on the alertness elevator based on what we are experiencing in our environment. So understanding how my nervous system works and how sensitivity isn't a flaw, but rather it falls on a spectrum, completely changed how I approach managing my stress. Now, instead of beating myself up for being too sensitive, I embrace it as part of who I am. and I've developed techniques to manage it in a way that supports me rather than sabotaging myself. All right, so today we're going to dive into 4 major concepts. This is based on Linnea Passaler's work. The first one is the sensitivity spectrum. The second concept is the 4 pillars of nervous system health. The third is the alertness elevator. And the final one is the 5 stages towards nervous system regulation and healing. These concepts have been game changers for me and many others. We will hold the power to move from simply reacting to life's challenges to responding in a way where we stay in control. Now, the key idea to heal your nervous system and for regulation is to shift from fixing things that aren't necessarily broken. And we shift away from the fix towards developing flexibility. That's what we're going to concentrate on. So we can experience a stressor, large or small, acute or chronic, and then be able to return back to baseline. This has a direct effect on our weight, our sleep quality, our hormones, and our entire biology down to the cellular level, and which it just affects everything, including total body inflammation, pain, etc. All right, so let's get into the first concept, the sensitivity spectrum. The sensitivity spectrum, according to Passaler, individuals will fall into 3 main categories. Orchids are very fragile flowers. These represent about 25 to 30% of humans. They are more prone to nervous system dysregulation, but they are also highly creative and empathetic. Tulips, a moderately resilient flower, and this represents about 40% of the population. Tulips experience sensitivity, but can navigate challenges with more resilience. And the third category on the sensitivity spectrum are dandelions. This represents about 30% of the population. Dandelions are extremely resilient, less affected by external stimuli. And those are the 3. This spectrum shows that sensitivity can be both a strength and a challenge. Individuals who are more sensitive often experience greater stress responses, but this also gives them a better sense of awareness and also more empathy. And so even though they tend to experience stressors more greatly, they also tend to respond very effectively to regulation strategies. Now, according to Passaler, the sensitivity spectrum and the ways we respond to stimuli is everyone falls somewhere along a spectrum. So the stimuli can be categorized into 3 main types: emotional, environmental, and sensory. So for those with emotional sensitivity, they may be deeply affected by others' moods, body language, experience emotions like joy, sorrow, anger, or love even more intensely. Environmental and sensory sensitivities include being more reactive to things like light, sound, temperature, or smells. Individuals on the highly sensitive end of the spectrum may feel overwhelmed by these types of stimuli more often than others. So remember that we have 3 types of sensitivity: the orchid, the tulip, and the dandelion. And then we have 3 types of stimuli, which is environmental, emotional, and sensory. So if you tend to be more sensitive, you're more prone to feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and experience dysregulation. So by understanding this and learning to manage it through observation rather than self-judgment, along with incorporating healthy lifestyle habits, spending more time in nature, this can help with your sensitivity. This is an ongoing sensory sensitivity practice that supports you. This is always going to be running in the background. The second concept is the 4 pillars of nervous system regulation. And so Passaler emphasizes 4 core pillars that are crucial for regulating the nervous system, helping it return to a balanced state. The first pillar is body, which is comprised of our genes, our DNA, what we eat, our microbiome, which is the organisms that reside in our mouth, gut, genitalia. It's also comprised of our sleep patterns and any physical injuries or chronic pain. The second pillar is the mind, which includes your self-esteem, your coping strategies, your cognition, and behavioral tendencies. The third pillar is connection, our relationships, our community ties, our sense of safety and belonging. And the fourth pillar is spirituality, finding purpose, meaning, or a deeper connection to something larger than ourselves. So we're going to always be working on the 4 pillars of nervous system regulation: body, mind, connection, and spirituality. Now, what was happening in today's societies, we're often trying to fix physical or emotional symptoms with Western medicine or even Eastern practices like yoga, acupuncture, or even trying to achieve enlightened state, all of which can work. But the concept of nervous system regulation emphasizes the need to be holistic, which we haven't normally been trained to do in our culture, or even like traditional healthcare practitioners. All right, the third concept is this alertness elevator. The third concept is called the alertness elevator, where Passaler describes the alertness elevator as different levels of arousal in the nervous system. So for example, we're gonna take the example of a busy 45-year-old mom who's having trouble just with her nutrition. She's having trouble getting her workouts in. So let's talk about the most calm state in the alertness elevator would be the blue state. This is known as deep rest and cellular regeneration. The body is in full relaxation and recovery mode. For example, our mom avatar might be in this state after a restful night of sleep or during a perfect family vacation while reading her favorite book on the beach with perfect temperatures and breezes. Moving up the elevator, the next state is the green. It's known as the relaxed and focused state. This is where we are calm, alert, fully engaged in the moment. This is where productivity flows effortlessly without the burden of stress or distraction. So our busy mom might be in the green state where she's handling after school time. She got in her workout. She's preparing dinner while her kids do their homework. She's not frazzled or rushed to Uber multiple kids to multiple places. She feels present and in control, multitasking, but with a sense of calm. There is an efficient rhythm where she feels productive and clear-headed. Moving up the alertness elevator would be the yellow state, which is mild stress or cognitive overload, feeling slightly on edge or fragile. There's a growing sense of stress, but it's still manageable. For example, our busy mom might be juggling work calls, the kids' needs, trying to fit in her workout, and starting to feel slightly overwhelming, but she's able to push through. The next state is the red, full alert, sort of getting into fight or flight mode. The body is in full stress, ready for immediate action. So our mom might be rushing to get the kids to school on time while rushing to get to work because she has a deadline or she has an important meeting. Everything feels urgent, and our mom is likely reacting to stress by snapping at family members and even feeling a bit of panic. We might notice signs like sweating, a racing heart, more shallow breathing. It might be hard to think clearly because of the overwhelm. And the following state, which it might be rare for some, and we really want to avoid this, would be the purple state. It's the emergency state. Freeze or shut down. The body is in responding to extreme fear or dread, where it's potentially shutting down or checking out to protect itself. So an example of this would be burnout, emotional numbness, complete exhaustion, maybe even some depression and anxiety so severe where you can't get out of bed, or even physical danger. All right, so what happens is when the nervous system stays dysregulated, typically stuck in the red and yellow states, that's when we experience weight gain, low energy, disrupted sleep, all of the physical symptoms related to stress. The goal of the nervous system is to allow the body to move flexibly between these states and return to a calm green state after a stressful experience. So we're not trying to avoid things, we are trying to return back to baseline once we experience these things, because a lot of them are unavoidable. So when we stay stuck in the yellow, where we get this poor sleep, weight gain, mood swings, hormonal imbalances. All right, so let's get into solutions. There are 5 stages of nervous system regulation. The first stage is awareness. This involves recognizing when your nervous system is dysregulated. For example, you get into a disagreement with your coworker, then you get into your car after work and you're already in this yellow state. You're driving along, someone cuts you off in traffic, almost causing an accident. Your heart is racing, you feel sweaty, you're pushed into the red state. You spend the next few minutes trying to calm your nerves, but keep ruminating about the disagreement with your coworker. You're able to move out of the red state, but are now stuck in the yellow state. You get home, immediately notice that there's clothes on the floor and dirty dishes in the sink. Your anger level is at a 10 out of 10. But here is the kicker. In this case, you've learned about the awareness state. And this time around, instead of snapping at your family, pouring a large glass of wine, or reaching for that comfort candy bar, you pause to recognize your heartbeat is rapid and you have feelings of overwhelm and irritation. You label these feelings. Before you move into your old coping habit, you take 2 more minutes to observe what is happening in your body and emotions. You acknowledge where you are on the alertness elevator. You are practicing what is called the gap, or as sometimes I like to define it, choosing to surf and ride the wave of discomfort. Some of us are better at practicing this than others, and some may already do it unknowingly, but this is what keeps us in control, the awareness. And this time around, by practicing awareness, you didn't have to judge or criticize yourself for diving into the Oreos or snapping at your partner. The second stage of regulation is called regulation. Once you're aware and able to practice awareness, stage 1, the next step is using tools to calm and control your vitals. This can include deep breathing, mindfulness, or movement to shift out of a red or yellow state. This type of regulation practice assures your nervous system that you are safe and not in immediate danger. And this is what you're going to start with. A physiological sigh, and this is backed by some science-based evidence out of, I believe, Huberman's lab. The physiological sigh is 2 brisk, full inhalations to fill the lungs, followed by a slow exhalation. So it'd be where the exhale is a lot longer than the inhalation. You're going to do this for several rounds before moving on with your day. Take a moment to observe your heart rate, your temperature, and your breath. Over time, doing this type of practice helps us calm down and move out of the high alert states. So instead of trying to halt or change our emotions, and emotions are complex, right? Since they are a combination of our DNA, our perception of the environment, and past experiences. So instead of trying to change our emotions, we're going to do body-based processes like the breath work first, instead of trying to fix our thoughts. The third stage is restoration. In this stage, we address the patterns of dysregulation in both the body and the mind. This involves recognizing embedded alarms, deep emotional responses from past traumas such as fear, embarrassment, or grief. These alarms could stem from situations like public humiliation, physical or emotional abuse, the loss of a loved one. So rather than seeing similar future situations as threats, the goal here might be to work with a professional to unlearn these embedded alarms, these embedded responses. We don't dismiss the pain, but we begin to see challenges instead of threats. This phase is about developing resilience by using past experiences like small victories to build confidence. It's also where we experiment with healthier coping mechanisms that support healing instead of causing harm. This is where we build strength, so even when a storm comes, we can withstand. So we've discussed awareness, regulation, and restoration. The fourth stage of nervous system regulation is called connection, repairing bonds and cultivating kinship. In this stage, it's all about repairing and strengthening our relationships. Since we are created to have a deep biological need for connection. This involves building a supportive network where you can both give and receive care. It involves surrounding ourselves with people who make us feel safe and uplifted, relationships that nourish us instead of drain us. This phase is also about connecting with our sense of purpose, ensuring our daily decisions are aligning with our core values. So we start to ask ourselves questions like, am I living in a way that feels true to me? If I were told I had a week or a month to live, what would I start focusing on to not have any regrets? Within this connection stage, you can also concentrate on setting clear boundaries and enforcing them. People who cause you stress or discomfort, maybe you can't cut them out, you just move them to the outer circle. You move them from the core circle to the outer circle. It might mean cultivating new friendships that feel supportive, where you are giving support and receiving support. Part of this stage is also tuning into your body, learning to recognize how certain people and environments make you feel. If you feel at peace and grounded with certain folks, that's a sign of positive connection. If you tend to feel tense or anxious, it might be time to reevaluate those relationships and those boundaries. And the final fifth stage for nervous system regulation is expansion. So I think I've been skipping over stage 1 through 4 and trying to perform expansion by things like deliberate cold exposure, or even lifting heavy weights. This would be purposely exposing yourself to stressors with the intention of positively adapting. So stage 5 expansion focuses on applying controlled stressors with the intention of growing stronger mentally and physically. So once we progress through the earlier stages of nervous system regulation, and this may take months or years, the whole goal is to be patient, complete each stage, maybe with the help of a professional, and intend to practice this as a lifelong practice. So we've moved through the initial stages, we've built resilience, and now we're going to use that foundation to expand our capacity for stress. So again, we are going to purposely introduce intentional stressors like challenging workouts, maybe public speaking, pushing ourselves out of comfort zones in small controlled ways to build adaptability and toughness. These controlled stressors stimulate growth by encouraging the nervous system to handle stress in healthier ways. This means that over time, the same stressors that once overwhelmed us feel manageable. It makes us stronger. For example, progressively lifting heavier weights helps our muscles grow stronger. Similarly, in life, stepping outside of our emotional comfort zone. For myself, it's having difficult conversations rather than avoiding them. Trying new uncomfortable things helps us build mental resilience. The goal is to keep pushing our boundaries in ways that foster growth while keeping us grounded in self-awareness that we developed in the earlier stages. So in conclusion, we are going to be able to move out of the fight or flight mode states and into the rest and digest states of calm. I like to refer to it as being able to toggle effectively between sympathetic and parasympathetic, right? We're going to not avoid, but we're going to exhibit flexibility. And we do this by recognizing where we are in the sensitivity spectrum. We do this by consistently focusing on the 4 pillars of nervous system health, which is body, mind, connection, and spirituality. And we continuously move through the 5 stages of nervous system regulation. And once we truly are able to do this, it's never going to be perfect, but we can conquer stress management, get closer to our goals of fat loss and muscle building, have more energy, better quality sleep, better relationships with others and with ourselves. And that's it. I said I was going to talk about psychology hacks like utilizing core values and identity to move you towards your goals, cost-benefit analysis and high ROI behaviors, taking messy but consistent action, and not relying on motivation, but rather automation, not feeling sometimes, just being able to do. This is where habits and automation comes in. And then also the last psychology hack is understanding that in the beginning, effort is not linear with the results. I'm going to save that for a later episode or email. And thanks so much for tuning in. I know your time is valuable. I appreciate you listening to this, and I will see you next time.